First of all, I'm Betsy Alice, and I'd like to commend all of you for running what I consider to be a reasonably civil race. And, judging by the things that would come in my mailbox, that's not always the case. So thank you for that. The funding of public education has taken some real hits in the last 4 or 5, 10 years in the state of Wisconsin, and the result of that is starting to show. We are starting to suffer from the inability to recruit good teachers, and we are kind of on the losing end of the testing scores. So I think it's something that everyone in Wisconsin, and I'm a person from Michigan, but I remember that Wisconsin was always seen as one of the top education states in our country. Both Tony Evers and Scott Walker are calling for an increase in K-12 spending. And I'd like each of you to talk about whether you will support this effort, and if yes, why, and if no, why not?
Anybody want to go first? You want me to start off?
I can start. Absolutely, I would support, ever since I've been there for 6 years, I've been a proponent of public education. By Constitution in the state of Wisconsin, we have to provide public education. The one thing though, I think that you should know is that like our graduation rates are actually up. So we've actually improved on some facets. Last time when we were actually going for this budget and they talked about $200 more per student per year, I said good, because I think that was one of the biggest things that we needed, because it's nowadays, it doesn't cost the same to operate a school, to operate a business, whatever, as it did 6 years ago. So you obviously have to give a little bit more, because everything else from utilities to worker pay to health insurance costs have gone up. So I think the increase, even Tony Evers, when the budget first came up, before he was running for governor, said this is a good education budget, it's a kid-friendly budget. So with that, I will definitely support. I know that Governor Walker has talked about getting back to the 2/3 funding formula for our education. And I think we can get there, and I think we can work together and actually get it done.
Let's go, Mrs. Strada, and Mr. Lemieux, please.
Thanks. That's a great question. We're talking about funding, obviously, having children in the public education system. Obviously, I know that we need more funding. I see the strains on teachers. I also know that under Walker, they took $400 million away from our children. And when we're talking about a formula of how different districts get the money that is included in the budget, we're actually, Manitowoc gets doubly hit. We get hit hard because we are not actually getting funding at the same level as communities that are the same size as us. So when they took money away from us, we got hit double hard. And I think we look at, we have a perfect example. We look at Lincoln a day after the school opens, because we're pushing infrastructure costs a little bit back. We're putting other things ahead of fixes that need to be in our school. We had, an infrastructure failure where our kids could not go to school because the ceiling caved in. That means we are failing our children. And that's why, another reason why I decided to run, that's concerning to me. When we take $400 million out of a budget that's supposed to go to our children and then try to give some back, that's like me taking $2,500 out of your bank account, giving you $500 back and saying I gave you something. We're talking about public education funding, and we're saying, okay, now we're splitting it between our public schools and voucher schools. That takes another big hit. We are stealing from our children's future. So if I get elected, I will definitely be an advocate for not only our teachers, who do an amazing job on we can't retain enough good teachers. They want to leave because we've kind of made them the enemy, and that's sad that that's the way it's going. And we've seen these class sizes that are just astronomical with kids with special needs, and we're not investing in our teachers, we're not investing in our children. And I think we just need to be really, really conscious of the people that we're electing that are paying attention to our teachers, paying attention to our future, which is our children. And we definitely need to invest, and we definitely need to invest hard and pay attention to how we're voting.
Thanks for the question, Betsy. I always try, and thanks for the compliment. I always try to be positive in all my communications, especially on the campaign side. And I appreciate that a lot of the local campaigns in this area have been positive, despite some of the third-party groups which have been simply lies. That being said, the two budgets that we voted on, that I voted on, increased education funding in both budgets. And Paul, Representative Tittle did a good job of explaining how much we've increased it over the last 4 years. Additionally, I fought with we banded together with a lot of the local legislators from this area to try and increase funding for low revenue districts, those that are capped at lower levels. We got that change done in the budget. Unfortunately, the governor actually vetoed it out of the budget, but we succeeded with compromising with the governor at the end of session to make sure that low revenue districts, which have an unfair competitive advantage with schools in other parts of the state which have higher per pupil limits, can start making up that disadvantage and compete with schools around the state. In my district, 7 of the 15 schools are going to be benefited from this law change that we had in Maine, including Manitowoc, including Chilton, including Lewisburg, Plymouth, Kiel, Sheboygan Falls, Randley, that's all of them. So I'm fighting for the local schools in our area, making sure that they get fair funding, and going forward, we need to definitely keep increasing funding, for sure at an inflationary rate, to make sure that schools get the tools that they need to train our youth going forward. Additionally, we also need to, like we mentioned with the low revenue districts, is continue to work on the school funding formula, because it's been a mess for 20 years now, since about 1998, and we've made some attempts to try rectify that a little bit, but there's still a lot more work to be done to make sure that students all across the state, no matter what community they live in, have the same opportunity to succeed.
As a local school board member, I can tell you, I know the challenges that school districts are facing throughout Wisconsin right now. As a result of cuts to education that were deep, both 4 or 6 years ago, we're still reeling from. The increase in funding in this past biennial budget was needed, but we have to increase that further to invest in our public schools to make sure that every child succeeds. And we can see the results of it, right? Right here in Manitowoc, just last spring, it passed a $10.5 million referendum, just exceeding the levy, right? Just to get more operating revenue in place. Kiel also passed a multi-million-dollar referendum. Sheboygan Area School District, is a little further back, $27 million in referendum. All across the state, historic numbers of referenda are being passed. And that's because we're shy of funds. And I know that some folks say, well, you just want to throw money at the problem. I don't want to throw money at the problem. I want to throw teachers, school psychologists, and therapists at the problem. And social workers, but they all cost money. And so if we're going to expand skills training, if we're going to make sure that every child has a world-class education, if we're going to build a culture of entrepreneurship, it happens right there in our public education system. And as Representative Tittle mentioned, it is a constitutional obligation, and it's something that I'm very proud of in Wisconsin. But that also means that we've got to recruit and retain high-quality educators. Right now, it's a struggle. Enrollment in teacher preparation courses in Wisconsin is down 28% over the last 10 years. 1 in 5 educators leaves a position in their first 5 years. On average, teachers are paid less, have fewer benefits, and are less experienced. This is a result of structural decisions we've made in Madison. If we want our children to succeed, our teachers have to succeed, right? My mom's a public educator, and it's been rough. Morale is down. So we've got to value education, invest in it, and make sure that this continues to be the top priority for the state of Wisconsin.
Excellent.